Chuck and Bob with your preview of the high school football weekend as we go into week 6 in Indiana, week 2 in Michigan. Let's start a little bit north of the border, Robert, as we've got Kalamazoo United at Coloma. A couple of teams that like to throw the ball all over the lot.
And both of them scored a lot of points last week. Coloma got off to a great start. Both teams are 1-0, but they averaged about 40 points apiece last week. So defense is a little behind the offense right now. Both of them are very prolific, as you said, past the
football.
Yeah, that thing.
That thing. Will Zwiederveen, a quarterback for Kalamazoo United, had a good week last week, 205 yards for Troy Ayott's team. Meanwhile, Coloma really relies on another in the good line of good lines they have up there. This time it's Drew Goodline, and he has thrown 4 touchdown passes and ran for another last week. Should be a high-scoring affair up there in Comet Country. Back here in Indiana, a battle of the unbeatens at the Hornet Hive as Fairfield visits Angola in the Northeast Corner Conference. Angola beat Fairfield 2 years ago, Bob, 70-0. It's going to be a different story this time around.
It really is, and they give a lot of credit to Matt Thacker and what they're doing at Fairfield. It's phenomenal, the turnaround. And they've been playing a tough schedule, and they've been doing very well against that. This is really a battle, you know, and we talk about week 5, week 6. At this point in the season, are they playing for the championship in the conference? They may well be.
Triple option team for Fairfield. They've got a quarterback named Corey Lance. No, not the kid that led Wawasee to the state finals in 2004. He's working for Transformation Ministries, by the way, now.
Right.
This is a different Corey Lance, who's in his 3rd year as quarterback, really starting to see that triple option offense very well. They'll go up against an Angola team, Andy Thomas's squad, really relying on the Hasselman brothers. Tucker and Finley combined for 4 touchdowns last week in their win, so should be a fun one over in the Northeast Corner Conference. In the Hoosier North, the headline game this week, LaVille at Knox. LaVille comes in 2-0. Of course, they missed the first 3 weeks because of COVID-19. But Will Hostrasser's team really getting some nice play from quarterback Lucas Plum.
Wait a minute, he's just a freshman, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, and he stepped in, I mean, a tough situation, but he stepped in, he's done extremely well. And LaVille is number 12 in Class 2A. I mean, this is a team that's getting a lot of attention. And yet we were talking about how Knox has won their last 3 games, and all of a sudden you look at it and say if they were rating them on the last 3 games, Knox might be among the top 20 in the state as well. So,
well, we saw Knox earlier in the year, and when we take a look at the Redskins, obviously quarterback Zach Rose stands out. But Will Hostrasser was saying the Knox offense is a complex one to stop. They ran 26 different formations last week in a 45-12 win over John Glenn. And then I think their defense doesn't get talked about enough. You've got a couple of great linebackers there, and Gabe Lovins and Braxton Geller really help set the tone for them defensively.
well, as I said, it's just it's a great matchup because we have so much respect for Will Hostrasser, and of course Russ Radke is maybe the all-time leader in wins, still active in the state of Indiana. So this will be a good game, and I love the progress that Knox is making. Plus they're playing at home. This will be a tough assignment for LaVille.
Should be a good one in Stark County. In the NLC, we're looking at that Elkhart County rivalry between Northridge and Northwood, and a real contrast of styles here. Northridge smarting a little bit after that 27-14 loss to Warsaw last week. This is a physical ball club with that guy, Dominic Crowder, doing it on both sides of the football. Tom Wogeman really relying on his quarterback, Logan Hooley, and then Crowder and Mason Puckett defensively.
Good news for Northwood is that their quarterback, Nunemaker, is back and playing very well, and a big focus for what they try to do offensively there. You know, one of the things about the conference matchup here is that Warsaw is 3-0 in the NLC. And one of these 2 teams can stay in contention. The other one's going to have a tough time catching Warsaw.
Well, Northwood, of course, hoping to stay unbeaten itself in the NLC. And it helps that this guy, Nate Newcomer, number 5, is back and healthy for them. Last week against Wawasee, 113 rushing yards and 69 passing yards for Newcomer. And while he's the only guy you'll see in these highlights, he's not the only guy in their offense. Caden Lone and Kyle Sellers really offer some good speed on the perimeter, so you've got the physicality of Northridge against the speed of Northwood.
And the nice thing about Northwood is they played those guys last year, and they've got some experience, and they weren't the guys that were the focus of what was going on, but they are now.
So that one is in the Northern Lakes Conference. Let's move now to the NIC. A pair of 3-2 teams squaring off in New Carlisle as Adams visits New Prairie. The problem for Adams right now, Bob, is the caliber of competition has gotten a little bit tougher here as you go into the NIC North. They've struggled against St. Joe and Marion to move the football, but we saw them earlier in the year, and they can be explosive.
They really can be, and what a backfield they have with Worsham and Jeffries running back there sometime, and their quarterback, Gavin Pulling, was very prolific in the game that we did, and maybe ought to carry the ball a little bit more. They do have a chance to throw the ball because they run it so well, but I'm wondering about that defense, Chuck, and that's something that was a concern early on, and Antoine Jones working on that. Especially
because New Prairie found its offensive groove last week. They went back to some smash-mouth football. Why wouldn't you? Behind Hunter Whitenack, their D1 football lineman. And Noah Mangia with 196 yards rushing. Bobby Seifert had 115. Ian Scornog directing things. This is a New Prairie team that could be very dangerous come tournament time.
Yeah, I think Ian Scornog early on thought it's on me, much as it was last year. They had a quarterback that was pretty good last year. But Ian Scornog, I think, was trying to do a little bit too much too early, but the backfield is developed, and when you've got three threats in that backfield, the system they run, it's really tough to stop.
But if we're going to talk about big games in the NIC North, you have to talk about the one at TCU Freeby as Marion and Penn renew their rivalry. By the way, Penn leads that all-time series 8-7. Marion going to try to even it up with all the weapons they have on offense. Malcolm Anderson and Maddox Pagoni Bright and Davion Taylor, and all the talk about the offense, and rightfully so. But the defense, Stefano Setti and Gavin Stefanik, really set the tone for Michael Davidson's team.
Michael Davidson loves that. He kind of wishes that football was only a defensive game, but obviously they're doing a good job on offense. But defensively, they come up with different schemes. You mentioned 26 different sets for Knox on offense. They've got about a dozen different sets that they run on defense, and they will cause Penn to make some decisions. And their quarterback is a big, strong, strapping kid, but will he run the ball? Will he throw it to the receivers? I tell you, Ron Paulus Jr. had such a great fourth quarter last week. Plays like that all the time. Penn's going to continue to, and you brought up a good point about their schedule as well.
Well, Penn does not come into this without weapons either. You see Alec Hardrick here. He can fly, and Kyle Riffle can run it. Remember, kids, Penn has lost 2 one-point games. They could easily be 4-1, and they have easily played the toughest schedule in our part of the state. So don't count Penn out in this game, especially when you consider that Marion may not have played a line as talented as Penn's yet, both on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball.
Well, Penn last week, we saw them against Elkhart try to take away one facet of what Elkhart was trying to do. And so even though Woods got over 100 yards rushing, they tried to take away the running game for Elkhart, and the passing game wound up being pretty prolific. In this game, I think you're looking at a situation with Marion where if they can get to the wide receivers, the end arounds, that kind of thing, they can get Penn a little bit out of position. But Penn is going to try to stop one thing, and I think it's going to be Malcolm Anderson up the middle.
So that's the big game in the NIC North. We'll be at the big game in the NIC South. We go to Walkerton for the first time in 17 years. And for the first time ever, you can say first place is on the line in Walkerton in the NIC South as John Glenn plays host to Bremen. What a job the Falcons have done. They took their beatings for a couple of years with a young squad. Junior dominated now, and Austin Faust's team has really blossomed this year behind the quarterback talents of Nathan Creed. 81% of their offense runs through Creed, but the defense is really what has carried the Falcons to this point.
Yeah, Creed is such a good leader, too, on offense and in the whole team scheme, and they have people that got to go both ways, as you would expect in the size of these schools. One of the things about the NIC South now is that it really is a good matchup. I mean, everybody in the NIC South is more competitive. With Mishawaka leaving, Marion and St. Joe moving up, it's really the way the NIC should be, and I can compliment them on that. But as you said, there's a lot of growth in the last couple of years. At John Glenn, they're going to need that because Bremen...
They need to grow in a hurry against this Bremen team because John Glenn is undersized against a big Bremen offensive line. Bremen has a lot of people back from last year, but the one guy that they've added to the team is Blake Dingus, 6'2", 215 running back. He's right around 500 yards for the season. And you talk to even the people at John Glenn, And they say Dingus has been the difference maker for Bremen this year.
Yeah, big, strong running back. He also can catch the ball if needed, but they love to run behind their big offensive line, and they've got a couple of big guys, including his cousin, that lead the way out there. So he takes his cousin out for pizza and then runs behind him on Friday night.
So it should be a fun one at Falcon Field in Walkerton. We'll join you live on Facebook, YouTube, and the Champions Network at 6:45, and have it for you on TV-46 Friday night at 11 and Saturday morning at 9. Until then, for Bob Nagle, Chuck Freeby, thanks for joining us here at 46 Sports.